Crazy resolution. Anyway. That looks good. Looks good. Okay. Testing. Yep. Looks fine. Oh, 4 minutes behind. Okay, I think we'll start. We are running 4 minutes behind, and when I practiced this session, I was at 45 minutes exactly. So, yeah, let's start. Well, let's give these people a chance to sit down. No pressure. Okay, so let's start. Hello and welcome to the first session of Drupal South. I hope everyone's excited. I know I am, getting this session out the door and done with first thing in the morning, which is great. So it is perfect scheduling, Anyway, welcome to Media Management in Drupal 8. Just a bit about myself. My name is Ivan Zugec, and I've been a Drupal developer for around 12 years. I say 12 years because my Drupal profile account is at 12 years and I think 1 month or 2 months. So that's how I gauge how long I've been in Drupal. It's kind of scary to think 12 years ago I actually started using Drupal. And I write a lot about Drupal over at webwash.net. I also have free courses and videos. Technically everything is free now while I try and figure out how to monetize it. So fun. Okay, so what is the agenda for this session? Well, the presentation is broken up into 2 parts, 20 minutes of slides, because I know slides can be a little boring, and then 20 minutes of a real live demo. So we're going to first look at the history of media in Drupal 8. And then we're going to look at what's new in Drupal 8.6, because every 6 months, things change, which is great for Drupal, but it's a bit annoying when I have to keep updating content. But it's great, I love it. And then we're going to discuss other modules that you can use in Drupal 8. And then, of course, we'll jump into a live demo if we have time, hopefully, anyway, and then questions at the end. Now, if we don't have any time for questions, please come and find me. I'm here until Wednesday afternoon. Okay, so let's start right in the beginning. In DrupalCon Prague in 2013, I went to this session called Let's Fix File and Media Handling Once and For All. And the thing that didn't capture my attention, wasn't the all caps or the big heading, it was the fact that Drupal needs better media handling. Now remember, this is 2013, this is Drupal 7 days. And when you install Drupal 7, I actually had a slide that demonstrated what happens when you install Drupal 7. You just get a text area, you don't even get an editor. But then fast forward a couple of years, in this session, the presenter literally got up to the podium and said, let's fix file and media handling, and then he gave it to the floor and then asked people to come up and give give their opinions on how they would fix it up. So he didn't really prepare anything. He just wanted to see how the community would fix it up. So fast forward a couple of years, well, a year or so, and then we have the Drupal media team. Now the Drupal media team is a collection of module maintainers that maintain Drupal 7 modules, such as Scald and Media, and they all decided to get together to build an awesome media ecosystem instead of having these competing modules. Because Media was okay, I had a few issues with it, and Scald was a great module once you discovered it, because usability of a module starts with a name, and it doesn't really have the word media in it. But those two were the Drupal 7 solutions, so they decided to just get together and build something awesome. And if you want to look at all the modules in the ecosystem, these are only some of the modules. There is a GitHub GitHub repo at that URL where you can read all the documentation, and it's kind of like a Drupal 8 media guide. And you can see that there are a lot of modules there, but they're not all required. The ones that I've used the most are Crop API, DropzoneJS, Embed API, which is required for Entity Embed, Entity Browser, and then you have Image Widget Crop and Media Entity. Now, Media Entity is no longer required, and I'll talk about that in a second. But these are the modules in the ecosystem. Now, this may have changed because I took this screenshot, I don't know, about a month ago. And then there was a blog post by Dries Boyta. Now, for people who don't know, Dries founded Drupal in the noughties, so I don't know, 2001, 2002, and he actually started the project. And he wrote a blog post about a plan for media management in Drupal because he saw that there was an ecosystem of modules getting built, and then he thought, well, why don't we add this in Drupal core? Because when somebody's evaluating Drupal right now, if they install Drupal, well, if they were to install Drupal 8.1 or 8.2, the only media handling you would get is the ability to embed an image into an editor, and that's it. So in this blog post, he talks about setting up a Drupal initiative and then getting a lot of this stuff into core. Now, Drupal 8 has a 6-month release cycle now, which is very different to older versions of Drupal. So every 6 months, we get new features in Drupal. So Drupal 8 has a lot of these initiatives where people just get together and work on something. Another one which I'm excited about is Layout Builder. So Drupal can finally have a decent layout builder in core. And if you want to learn more about the initiative, head over to that URL. Now, I'll make these slides available, so you don't have to quickly write those URLs down. But on this page, you can see what they are building. Now, this may have changed, because again, I took this screenshot a while ago. But you can see that Media API is done, support additional media types, audio, video are done, provide support for remote media, such as YouTube, is done. I don't know why it's not crossed out with Embed, which is new in 8.6. And you can see that they want to put in bulk uploading and embedding through the WYSIWYG, which is absolutely awesome. So that's kind of a quick history. Now let's talk about what's possible in Drupal 8.6. Now, before I jump into just talking about modules, let's agree on three media management functionalities. And the first is the ability to store an asset. You want to upload it. And then you want to browse those stored assets so you can reuse them. And finally, you want to embed those assets. Now, this is how other CMSs do it, such as WordPress. And I'm not sure about Joomla, but I know WordPress does this because I actually run a WordPress site and I write content on it. So I know how WordPress does it. So let's now go through these three key functionality. The first one is, how do you store an asset? In older versions of Drupal 8, which is kind of funny to say because Drupal 8's now been around for a while, but if you were to use Drupal 8.0 to 8.4 perhaps, you would use Media Entity. Now, Media Entity is a very basic module. It just implements a custom entity type, which is fieldable. So if you know how to create content types and attach fields to them, you know how to use Media Entity. But a lot of the media handling is handled in these provider modules. So Media Entity doesn't know how to pull in a thumbnail from a YouTube video. That's handled with Video Embed field. It doesn't know how to generate a image thumbnail. That's handled with the Media Entity image module. So you can see that there are a lot of media providers here. And generally, if you were to create a media bundle, you would also have to download one of these media providers. But the first bit of work was to get this stuff into core. And luckily, they didn't lift and shift, which is the greatest term I always hear in a meeting, once you just lift and shift it. Instead of just grabbing Media Entity and dumping it into core, they created a new module called Media, and they cleaned up the APIs and also changed, I think, the entity machine name so that it doesn't conflict with this module. And then in 8.4, if you read the press release that came out in 8.4, a few places were saying that Drupal 8 now supports media, which is great, but the problem was it was experimental and it was hidden by default. Now, experimental makes sense, but hidden by default was a new one. So if you went into the extend page, you couldn't see it unless you installed it using Drush or another module set it as a dependency. But then in 8.5, that was all sorted out. It was no longer experimental and it was no longer hidden by default, and it was the de facto way of storing media assets. Now, we still need to use media providers, but this time you use version 2 of the media provider, because version 1 integrates with media entity, version 2 integrates with core media. So here's a screenshot of the, I think this is media entity Twitter, version 1, which has a security release, which is security supported. Version 1 is for media entity. Version 2, even though it is alpha, is for core media. And if you install media using the standard, well, if you've installed Drupal using the standard installation profile, you'll get these 5 media types out of the box: audio, file, image, remote video, and video. The difference between remote video and video is that remote video allows you to put in YouTube or Vimeo URLs, and then it embeds the player, whereas remote video just allows you to upload a MP4. So I only really use file, image, and remote video. And you also get this great media tab, which is just the view, and you can pretty much create this from scratch if you want. Media entity image, media entity document have been moved into core, which is great, 2 less modules. So which module should you use? Because you can use media entity, no one's stopping you from using it. But I would say if you're starting a brand new project right now, use media, okay? Just use it. If you are stuck on older versions of Drupal 8, where you started your Drupal 8 project on 8.2 or 8.3, then you can keep using media entity. There will eventually be a migration path for your content, but right now, use media. Now let's talk about browsing. How do you browse all these stored assets? Well, the best way is to use Entity Browser. Now, this allows you to create a little browser pop-up where you can pick and select assets. Now, take note, if you are using the media module, which you should be, make sure you use version 2 of Entity Browser. And here it is in action on the media field, which is just an entity reference field. You can select your assets, and then you can even reorder them so that if you want one to appear above the other, if you're creating some type of gallery. And here's another example using entity embed, which I'll talk about in a second. And you can upload your assets. You can then display them as a thumbnail. You can resize them, do whatever you want with them. So it is pretty powerful. And in 8.6, there's a new experimental module called Media Library. And it integrates nicely with the media field. And out of the box, you get a nice interface. But as of 8.6, it's not integrated with entity embed, so you can't really use it if you want to embed stuff through the editor. But if you want to allow your editors to view a browser at the field level, at the media field level, then this is probably a good option. And even though it is experimental, it's not changing content, and you can play around with it and hopefully uninstall it without breaking your site. So just play around with it. So which module should you use? Well, this one's a bit of a tricky one. If you want to allow editors to embed assets through the editor, well, then you will have to use Entity Browser. If not, then just look at Media Library. But I put in Entity Browser because it just gives you a bit more flexibility, but it can be a bit of a pain to set up. As you'll see in the demo, there's a lot of steps. So finally, let's talk about embedding. Now, to embed an asset, you should use Entity Embed. Now, this module has been around for a few years. There's a few Drupal 7 versions, but the Drupal 8 version is the de facto way of embedding assets until this functionality is built into core. When you configure it, you get this nice little icon with an E. That's the default icon, but you can change it to whatever you want. And then you have to configure a few filters, because when you embed an asset, if you look right there on the left, it embeds this Drupal element tag, and then the filter reads your markup and then loads up an entity. And so this is pretty much the same GIF from before, because Entity Browser, Entity Embed are heavily coupled. So you can embed something in, and then you can also align it, add a caption, and do all sorts of stuff with it. And also you get the ability to display items as thumbnail, and then you can set the image style, so your editors can upload large images and then resize it when they embed it in, which is great. But there is no core module for it just yet. There is an issue for it, but there is no core module. But I'll just mention one other thing. With Entity Browser and Entity Embed, don't just think of them as a media tool. You could use them to create some type of functionality where your editors can embed related blog posts because it works around the entity system. So don't just think about them as a media module. You can use them to embed products into blog posts so that you can upsell them to your readers or something like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. And that's the good thing about Drupal. Everything's kind of abstracted away, which is difficult if you're trying to learn this stuff, but once you understand it, you're like, oh, that's awesome. Now let's quickly talk about other modules. I'm just checking the time. All right, let's quickly go through other modules. If you want to embed videos such as YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook videos, look at Video Embed field. Now again, make sure you use version 2 because that integrates with the core media module. Out of the box, the module supports video and YouTube, but if you want to embed Facebook or Vine or Instagram videos or anything like that, you'll need to download one of these other modules. And on the field, because it works around a field, like hence the name Video Embed field, you get these options for the formatter where you can autoplay and you can make it responsive, but with making the player responsive, you can do that through your theme anyway. But in Drupal 8.6, there is now OEmbed support, which is awesome. So you technically don't have to use Video Embed field. And this is automatically set up on the remote video. However, only YouTube and Vimeo are supported with OEmbed. So that's something to be aware of. You may, if you only want to embed YouTube or Vimeo videos, then maybe this is the best solution for you. But the formatter doesn't have as much options, but again, if you want to make the video responsive, that can be handled with either a JavaScript library or in the theme. Now let's talk about Inline Entity Form. Now, Inline Entity Form is a great module which you should be using on pretty much any site, and it allows you to embed other entity forms within the one form. So, for example, if you are creating an article and you want to create a media entity, instead of having to jump to another page to create it, then coming back, you can create it from the one form without having to leave the form. It's just a nice UI touch. And it integrates nicely with Entity Browser. So you can see that is a inline entity form, and then it just allows you to embed it, which is great. Another one is DropzoneJS. Dropzone is a JavaScript library that allows you to to bulk upload images with previews. And of course, if you want to integrate it with Drupal, you can use DropzoneJS, the module, which as of now only works with Entity Browser. So you can't just install the module and get a drag and drop functionality. You need to use it with Entity Browser, unless they put this functionality in the last week or so, but it only works with Entity Browser. And so here it is in action. You can click and drag your items over, and then it automatically pre-fills the image entity form, and then you can save your entities, which is pretty cool. Another one is Crop API. Now, this is just an API. Again, use version 2 if you're using the media module. It offers no user UI because it is just an API, and it replaces manual crop and image JavaScript crop. And then there's also another module called image widget crop that allows you to crop images from the image widget field. Now, you can define multiple crops. So thumbnail is a crop type, but again, because this is Drupal, you can create as many crop types as you want. But don't go crazy with this. I've worked on sites that went crazy with creating a crop type for mobile, tablet, desktop, then a crop type for mobile 2x, tablet 2x, desktop 2x, then created another crop type for banner mobile 2x, banner mobile, banner tablet, and then every time an editor had to upload an image, they would have to define 15 crop types, and that kind of slows the editor down. So just use it sparingly, okay? Now, another module, which is a bit better to use because it does automate things a lot nicer, is Focal Point. Now, Focal Point allows you to set a focal point of the image, and then Drupal will crop around it. Now, this can be configured at the image style level, but that is hard-coded, so that in the image style, you can always say, okay, crop from the top, But in some images, you may want to define the focal point, because I'm sure you've worked on a site where an editor's uploaded a portrait and then Drupal just crops the torso and then chops the heads off. So this way, you can set the focal point to crop either the head or somewhere else, and then, Drupal can crop around it. So what modules are required right now if you want to build this in Drupal? Well, this is my list, okay? First of all, it's the core media module, video embed field if you're not going to use the Embed support. That's in core. Entity embed. Embed is required by entity embed. Entity browser. CTools is optional because it's only used for creating entity browsers. Inline entity form and DropzoneJS. So now it's demo time. How are we going with time? Okay, it's okay. This resolution is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway. Can you guys see that? No, just joking. Okay. I don't think I've ever... How much is that? Increase this by 300%. And that is as much you can zoom in Firefox. Interesting. Okay. 300% is the max. Okay. So here I've got a standard Drupal site. I've just installed it, and I just created this awesome article using Hipsum. So if you want to have a read of it, craft beer, it's got all this stuff. It's just dummy text. Anyway, so let's now create. So the first thing we're going to do is install the media module. So all you need to do is go in and search for media. Now, I've gone ahead and downloaded the modules. I don't think you all want to watch Composer work for 20 minutes downloading all these modules, so I've just done that beforehand. And then all I'm going to do is install the media module, and I'll give this a second or two. Now this machine is slow. Drupal is not slow, it's just this machine's 6 years old or something. And if you go to Content, Media, you get this nice view. Again, you can create that yourself. And then if you go into Add Media, you can create all your media types. Now, this is very similar to creating a content. It's the same experience. But let's create an image. And what I'll do is I will just drag in. Oh, jeez, man, this is tiny as. I'll just grab this in, pop that in. We'll call this Drupal icon, and then Drupal icon. Can't spell. And then I'll hit in and save it. Okay, now we've uploaded our asset. Well, nothing's really groundbreaking at this point. And then you get the detail page. If you want to hide this page, because sometimes you may not want users getting access to this page, which you can't see up the top here, but it's just media/1, and then it'll be media/2. So this is the media canonical page. For SEO reasons, you may not want this to be public. There is an awesome module, which is awesomely named, called Rabbit Hole, which actually allows you to control access to these canonical pages. I had no idea about this module until I found it randomly, but it's an awesome module. So I know somebody asked me in one of my blog posts about it, just use Rabbit Hole to lock down these pages. But you can also use that module to lock down content type pages, or taxonomy terms as well, whatever you want. So now let's quickly create a YouTube video as well. And, oh man, let me just zoom this in. So I've got my notes here. So all I'm going to do is put in my YouTube video, and you can see it's actually very simple to do. Put in your URL, and you hit save. And this is all with the media module. I haven't downloaded any modules yet. And then media gets the thumbnail, and then if I click on the canonical page, the detail page for the media, I get a nice little player, which is great. Now let's create our own media type. And what I'll do is I will go into extend, because now let's say I want to allow users to embed Instagram posts. And so what I'll do is I will search for media entity Instagram, which is a media provider, and make sure you use version 2. And just give that 1 second. And then once that's installed, all I need to do is create a new media type. So go to structure, media type, and then here you can see all your media types. If you click on the drop down, you can manage them. Now, this should look familiar if you know how to create content types and all that. It's the same field system, it's the same UI, it's exactly the same. But let me go in there and create a new Instagram. And then from the media source, I should see Instagram because I installed the module. And then if you click on that, now you need to configure a few things. The first thing is you need to tell media where the source information will be stored. Now the source information will, most of the time, I'll say 99% of the time, be stored in a field. So that can be an image field for images, or it can be just a text field to store the URL. So we're going to say just create a new field, and then you can actually set up mapping, which is pretty cool. So the media source provides metadata for the object, so I can actually map, say, the Instagram caption, the author of the post, to a custom field, which is pretty good. This, I think, is more useful on images. So if you want to store the width and height of an image, you can easily just map those values to a custom field, if for some reason you want to store the width and height on the actual media entity. So then just click on Save, and now it's just going to create a media type, and we have a nice little Instagram media type here. And then if I go back to media, and click on Add Media, I get Instagram, and by default, you have to define a name, but let's just fix that up, because again, this is just general Drupal site building. So under Manage Form Display, you can easily just remove that widget, disable it, and then click on Save. And then if we refresh, we just get the Instagram field, which is pretty good. And let me put in a cool Instagram photo, which I took a very long time ago. And this is, and here is the player. Now we need to fix this up, okay? We need to fix this up. Now this is from, I think, DrupalCon London, a very long time ago. And let's just quickly clean that up so it embeds it, so we actually see the embedded player. So all we need to do is set this Instagram field to Instagram embed, and let's just leave everything else. But we should disable all the other parts. And then if we hit refresh, we get a nice embedded player. And so you can see how easy it is to create these media types, and as long as there is a media provider available, it's very easy to store these type of assets. Now let's look at embedding them. So the first thing I'll do is go into Extend, and I'll have to install a few modules. So the first one is, let's just install Entity Embed, and then everything else will get installed. Now, it's just going to install the embed module, and just give that a second. And then once this is all installed, I need a bit of hold music for this. Now, Drupal isn't this slow, it's just my machine. Slow machine. And then under configuration, there's a new option called Text Editor Embedded Players. By default, you get a node embedded button, but let's create our own one. And then I'll call this Asset Browser. You can call it whatever you want. And then you can select your different entity types. Now, as I mentioned, this could be used to embed any type of entity, not just media. So you can even, I don't know what it would be like if you were to embed a configuration entity, but I'll give it a go. Okay, let's now allow image, Instagram, and remote video, and we'll only allow full content and thumbnail view modes. And let's just click on Save. And then back into configuration. Now we need to add this button to our editor. Okay, we've only created the button, now we need to add it to our actual editor. So I'll add it to basic HTML, and you'll see that because I'm using the default E button, I just need to see which one it is. I think it's this one. And then you just drag it wherever you want. I'll just add it to media, but you can drag it to wherever you want. And then you need to configure the filters. Now this can be fun if this is the first time you're doing this, but I do have a blog post about this, like a 2,000 word blog post that explains all this stuff. But essentially, all you need to do is select Display Embedded Entities so that the filter reads the Drupal entity element and then loads them up. And then you need to uncheck, because I know there was a compatibility issue with this and with this restrict images to this site and entity embed. And if you're using limit allowed HTML, you need to allow these tags. So make sure you allow these, but most of the time it will automatically get added. So just make sure, so you can see there, it's automatically added in, which is great. And then I just like to reorder these things around and also make sure align images is above caption images. And then click on save. Okay, now let's test this out, make sure everything's working. The joys of a live demo. Okay, now what I'm going to do is edit it and pop this in, click on the E, and then you get this nice little autocomplete. Now, I know this interface isn't the greatest, but we'll fix that up. If I search for my name, well, the name of the media asset, Drupal icon, I can add that in. Let's select thumbnail, and let's resize it to a thumbnail size, and let's center it, and let's put in a caption. And then you can embed it in. Well, if you were to scroll all the way down and then view it, it's aligned in the center. And then you can also, let's make this image a little conservative and align it to the right. And then click on save. And best of all, there is integration. If you use quick edits, there is integration with quick edit. Now, hands up, who actually uses quick edit? Okay, I thought so. Anyway, yeah, it's one of those things where when I first played around with it, this little thing would often be off the screen and I couldn't find it, but you can use it. I mean, it's perfectly fine. Yeah, it's one of those things. Hopefully Layout Builder will sort it out. Anyway, so yeah, you can use that. You can do all sorts of stuff. Anyway, okay, let's now set up Entity Embed. So we can, well, no, we did that, sorry, Entity Browser. Okay, now this one's going to require a few modules, I think. Wait, Entity, what? Can't spell Entity. So Entity Browser, and Inline Entity Form, and CTools. I always forget CTools, because CTools isn't a hard dependency. So CTools, so the module is using CTools for its wizard library. So when you create a media browser, you will see that there are multiple steps to it. So the module doesn't require CTools to be used, say, in production if you're not creating these entity browsers. But chances are you will have CTools already installed. And then under configuration, we create our entity browser. And let's quickly go in there because I've only got 10 minutes, create our entity browser. And I do know that iframe is recommended as a display plugin because there was compatibility issues about a year ago when I was setting this stuff up with Entity Embed. I don't know if that's changed. And then you click on next. I always like to select auto open entity browser, just one less step. And then you just go next through all these options because there's nothing there. And now here you define your actual tabs, okay? And the first one is the ability to view your assets and select them. Now, from this dropdown, you'll see that there are no views to select, and that is because we need to create a view. Now, this is great if you understand views and you understand the Drupal ecosystem, but I think for beginner site builders, if they are playing around with Entity Browser and they don't know views, it can be a bit of a roadblock. So if this is the first time you are going to see views, then just look away because the UI can be a bit scary, but don't worry. It takes a bit of time getting used to. It is typical Drupal thing, just everything's abstracted away, which is great if you know how to, if you know the system. So all I'm going to do is create a basic view. All I'm doing is creating a view, selecting a media, and then creating the view. And there's two important things you need to do here, okay? The first is make sure you select the Entity Browser display. If you don't, well then your view won't be displayed in the dropdown. And then you can see our media assets there, but let's quickly fix that up. And what I'll do is I'll just add in a thumbnail. And another important one is the actual checkbox. So there will be a checkbox added to the view, and this is required to select your assets. And again, this is the second most important thing you need to do. So let's put in that, and also let's resize the thumbnail, and then click on apply. And we can see that, yeah, it's looking okay, but let's now quickly just change it into a table. And then last thing we're going to do, I promise, is reorder things. So let's put the checkbox up the front. There we go. So we have a checkbox here. If you can see that, it's a little tiny checkbox there. Thumbnail and the title. And then let's just click on save. And then now, if we go here, just wait for that to be saved, and we hit refresh, you will see a drop down with our view. And then just click on save. There's still a few more steps. Last thing to do is to now integrate this with Entity Embed. So let's go back into our button. And then select Asset Browser, which is our browser. And then, if all has gone well, where is my awesome article? Okay. Then click on the E. We get this nice little checkbox. And then let's just embed, I don't know, a player. A YouTube video. Select full content. And then we can embed it in. And that's it. Okay, so the last thing I'll show you, finally, because I've got probably 5 more minutes. Oh, there we go, 5 minutes, perfect. Is how to create these assets from the browser. So again, let's go back into our editor, sorry, our entity browser, go back to widget, and from this drop-down, you can select entity form. Now, this uses inline entity form, so that's why I mentioned it in the slides. And then add image, and then we need to find our media, and then we need to tell it which bundle it's going to use. Now, the annoying thing about this is, if you want to allow editors to add images or PDFs, you can't just use the one tab for everything. You will have to create another tab and then select file, because you can only select one bundle type, which is a bit annoying, but anyway, that's the way it is. So let's just finish this. And then that should be it. Let me go back into my content, awesome content, hit edit, and let's scroll all the way down. Where is it? And then if I click on add image, I get the entity form, thanks to inline entity form. But then I've got this nice, whoa, oh man, this is so small. Nice image, I'll call it banner. I'll call this one banner. Scroll down, hit save entity, and then I can embed it. And then if I want to scroll all the way up, and if I click on the E again, well, no, not that, if I click on this E, I can see the banner that I just installed. Oh, sorry, added. Okay. Well, that is it. Any questions? Well, no, questions. Wait. Oh, I have questions at the bottom. Anyway, questions. Thank you. We're going to have 3 minutes, I think.
Hello. Oh, it works.
Hello.
Not a question so much as just a gotcha that you haven't raised that I wanted to point out to people.
Sure.
When you're creating the media entity, there's a tick box for saying it's published. If you turn that off, then it does remove the media/one page, but it also prevents the media appearing in anything you're editing. So don't bother with that tick box, unfortunately.
Okay. Okay. But then I think if you were to create a view, say with Entity Browser, you may want to allow users to, you may want to only display published media and assets in your view. But no, that's absolutely, yeah, good to know. It's good to know. Any other questions?
I find when you embed the video, when you click on the video and the video is disappeared. I Googled it and then people said put the width on it. If I put width on it, video is working, but it's because the image has a big gap between the, if I float the image on the left, it causes a big gap between the
Are you using what theme are you using?
Exactly same one.
Bartek theme.
Yeah.
How are you embedding the video?
Just
Which-
click on the e-buttons and
Oh, okay.
put the URL in there. You can
Put the URL on there. And then when you click on play, does the player hide?
No, the video's gone.
See, that's probably some issue on the front end. I don't know, that could be many things. I mean, I think if I was to play the video, yeah, it could probably work. There could be some type of CSS jumping in the way. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Sorry? Yep.
Yeah, the question is, I've been using the media embed, and now I decided to use media. Is there any problems with that? Like, can I just uninstall media embed, media entity, sorry. Can I just uninstall media entity and use media?
No, because your entities will be media entity entities. So you will have to migrate the content over. Now, it shouldn't be that hard. If you really want to write a bit of custom code for it, and if you're only dealing with, say, 100 entities, you could write like some drush thing to just write it. And all you need to do is load up your entities and then just literally match them, like the field values, and then just store them. But yeah, you will have to write custom code to migrate that. Now there might be a module that does that. I don't know, but yeah, but you will have to migrate that content. Any other questions?
Okay, last question.
Yep.
So when you specify that you want a 100 by 100 thumbnail, how does the server load, so it's only delivering a small size image, so you uploaded a really large because you want a good quality image that's being delivered elsewhere, but you want just a thumbnail somewhere else, what's the server load? Is it the same, or how does it handle that?
Well, I've seen editors upload 5 meg, 5,000 by 5,000 images, and if you are using the standard, GD library, which is PHP's image resizing, I have had issues where